welcome to Thrivin With DVIBZ. We are here. My name is Nick from Toronto, Ontario.
My name is Miz D from Vancouver, British Columbia. And today on Thrivin With DVIBZ, we're going to talk about holistic wellness. Like, what does that really mean? This is a term we hear a lot, right?
Absolutely.
And much like the word love and friend, it's a beautiful word and term, but it means different things to different people.
Mm-hmm.
So, today we thought we'd talk about the areas of wellness that are important to us and how, that works really well. It pairs really well with cannabis, and how it helps us, Mary Jane helps us on our journey.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Nick?
Well, yeah, I'm really excited to get into it, to dig into this topic. It's a rich one. I feel like we're going to be able to really help everyone out there to start to put your wellness or your self-care toolbox together if you don't already have one, or to enhance the one that you do have if you're already on that path. And this episode is all about setting the foundation for everything else, all the other tools and areas we're going to get into. And I'm really excited to dive right into it. So why don't you kick us off? I think would be great if you could talk a little bit about what does wellness mean?
Mm-hmm. It's such a great topic, I think, holistic wellness, because it's just one of those terms that gets bandied around, right? Mm-hmm. And it means different things to different people, and it evokes different things in different people, right?
Yeah.
But it's not just a new age thought. I mean, this has been going on since, man could stand upright kind of thing, in different ways, right? We sleep for wellness. We need our rest, right? These typical things. We perform, hopefully, hopefully we perform some personal hygiene.
Yeah.
And then, that's wellness as well.
Yeah.
Lots of things qualify as wellness. For me, ultimately it comes down to how I feel, right? And, if I'm doing stuff like, honestly, okay, wellness doesn't need to look like, yoga and Pilates and all that kind of stuff, although that stuff is really good for wellness, right? With and for wellness. But it's not, that's often the image that comes into mind. But really, wellness is just simply about feeling, for me, engaged in my life, happy with who I am. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not room for improvement. Okay, we are all just works in progress, right? But I mean, to genuinely sit and think, like, am I happy with who I am? Am I happy with how I'm living? Am I happy with what I'm doing? Am I happy with my engagement with the world around me? And am I happy with the engagement with myself? So for me, what I have found is, because I'm an extremist, I think most people are extremists. They tend to go from 0 to 60 or black or white or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I know that when I feel not quite right, it's usually because I focused too much on one thing and neglected other areas that are important to me in my life.
Totally.
Do you understand that?
100%. Yeah.
What about you?
Well, very much the same. I think I feel like wellness, as I've evolved, what I understand wellness to be has evolved. So for me, it is really personal. That's what I've discovered, is that it doesn't really matter what other people choose, what other people want as their wellness practices. Like, what works for them may not work for me. So it just feels very personal, and something that I'm constantly tweaking and looking at and examining, because I can never get it right. And I've learned that that's part of it too. I'm never going to get it right. There's always going to be something that's a little bit loose or out of, okay, I got to go, move that or tend to this. And I feel like part of life is just tending to things. And, sometimes, maintenance, exactly. We can't do everything for everyone all the time. For me, there's always something that needs a little bit more work. So I think that's also part of just being human and being on this path.
And I can't help but think, when I think of my holistic wellness, the first thing that comes to mind for me is equilibrium or balance. And for me, that is like an inner balance. And I feel peace of mind with that. It brings with it peace of mind. And that's really important to me because, you know, we go through the trauma of life and you know, we get all this stuff built up, right? If we don't do anything with it. And then sometimes if we do things with it to express our frustration and our anger and our sadness and all of those kinds of things, they end up creating other problems, right? They end up creating bad habits and situations and stuff like that. So it's a bit like a double-edged sword, right? And well, double-edged sword is not really the term. It's more like the snake eating its tail.
Right, we're just going on metaphor hopping journey here. Stay with us. You're with us. Come on, look, we got it.
I love metaphors. What can I say? I'm not gonna apologize.
No, don't you ever. Don't you dare.
So yeah, you know, peace of mind for me. Okay, like they say that there's 3 people in each individual, right?
Okay.
You know that
No,
saying?
I don't. This is new.
Oh, okay. There's how somebody sees themselves, how others see them, and then how they truly are.
Wow, that third part that's a mystery.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the thing is, like sometimes, you know, how we see ourselves is not really how we are.
No.
Right?
Yes.
And we're going to get into that a little bit later as we talk about feelings versus facts.
Well, it's the hard part is it's a lot easier to see it in other people. It's the hardest to see it in ourselves.
Yeah. And so, like, you know, the whole point, I think, for me about wellness, like, I don't see it as a luxury. I see it as a necessity, like my personal wellness, because my personal well-being, when it is not fully happening, when it's lacking in some area and I am off-centered and I am feeling very unbalanced, you know, in all kinds of ways, right? I just don't feel good. And trust me, if I don't feel good, nobody around me hardly feels good because I'm just miserable.
Yeah.
You know? And I just, you know, had to think, like this morning when I woke up, I was so excited because I knew we were going to film today. But I woke up in just like this excruciating physical pain. And, you know, that just like sets the tone, right? It's like you wake up into that space. And for me, it was like, oh my God, you know, I knew I had to do something to deal with that, or else it was going to affect me all day long in all kinds of ways. Right? So, you know, I'm like I always say, I like to keep things simple. And so that's where my go-to. When I don't feel right, when I don't feel good, especially when it's, you know, any kind of pain, physical, mental, emotional, anything like that, I look to see where I can balance, where I can find my equilibrium, what I can address to do that. What have I been neglecting lately? You know, because we're not perfect. We're just like a work in progress, and we're perfectly imperfect, I guess you could say. And so, you know, it would be nice to say, like, if everything was perfect in your life, sure, you'd feel great, maybe. I don't know. Because I've never lived like that. Have you? Has everything been perfect for you? Like
not one day in this 43 years.
So I'm just saying, like, you know, for me, it's about pursuing my personal wellness despite what's going on. Despite what's going on out there and despite what's going on in here.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on out there.
And
a lot going on in here.
Yeah. So what about you? Like, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most important, like critical, and 1 being like take it or leave it kind of thing, or I don't even need it. How would you rate your pursuit of wellness in your life? Where does it rank in there?
I mean, it's funny. I was literally texting a friend today, and one of the things he said is like he's working at building his life around his wellness versus building his wellness around his life. And so I think that was something that I feel strongly as well. And for me, it's like it's not just. I think sometimes when people think of wellness, there's like an image that comes to mind. It's very like capitalistic, and it's like bath bubbles and expensive massages or something. Like it's
Manis and petties.
which, hey, no, nothing wrong with that at all. Like for the fellas and everybody out there, that's a great way to take care of yourself. But there's something deeper, which is it's my sense of aliveness. So it's beyond just wellness. It's like, okay, I can be alive at a light. My light can be 1 out of 10 every day, or it could be 2 or 7 or even more some days. So no matter what I do, I'm going to have low alive days where I don't really feel like getting up, and doing a lot. But the more I can feel, like most days I'm like, wow, my aliveness is increasing. I would say like that's my singular pursuit, even before my family's well-being is taking care of that, because I know that like I'm prone to sort of to slack over time, and to be like, oh, I've nailed this, I've got it, it's done, I've checked.
We always want to arrive.
Check,
right?
exactly. I'm here now. I work out every day. Yes, I know what I need for my nutrition protocols, and I take the right things, and like all of a sudden I'm like, eating candy and Rockstar energy drinks. I'm like, well, wasn't in the plan. How did that happen? So of course I do try and give myself a lot of grace, and I do try and be very gentle with myself and be like, all right, yeah, probably shouldn't have had that extra chicken wing there. You were done. You could have left that one. Did you need all that sauce?
Chicken wings.
I love chicken wings. Or maybe you don't have that beer, like just for fun, like have that. Like why did you just sort of crack it open, or whatever it is. So I do try and give myself grace, but also like to every day try and fall in love with discipline a little bit more, so that I'm getting stronger and getting more connected to that aliveness.
Yeah, it's funny because whenever we have to, or feel that we have to deny ourselves something, that does feel like discipline, doesn't it? It's just like, it just feels, like we have a crack in the whip or so, But the thing is we are human. So we are automatically imperfect.
Yeah.
And so I feel that that's really an important place to start. So that's why I feel like this topic is really important, because it's so subjective, right? It's so subjective to people about their wellness. And like things can impact that, right? Health can impact that. Traumatic experiences can impact that. All kinds of things. So, I feel like I love what you said about being gentle with yourself. First and foremost, like I feel like that's really important, and it goes along with that concept of approaching yourself as an ally or a best friend, right? Like, how are you going to treat that person?
Yeah.
Because the reality of it is that people often don't treat themselves the same way they would treat like somebody they love and they care about. And that makes sense. But, you can turn that around and, we're going to talk about all of these things in our episodes, all these tools that we use, but also like how they work and how they are enhanced by cannabis, and which in turn enhances our wellness.
Yeah.
Right. And we got a great article on our blog about that.
Yeah.
So definitely, if you haven't read that, you should go read it. It's on our website, DVIBZ.com.
We'll put it in everything. All the links will be in the show notes. We'll put it in there for you.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but you said something else I really wanted to touch upon. And that is, human beings. We are the blind leading the blind. And I just want to like put that out there, because I don't think anybody's got like all the answers. I don't think that even if someone is an expert of their own experience, like we like to be,
Yeah.
I don't think that that is applicable to somebody else
No.
necessarily.
No.
So we are very individual.
Mm-hmm.
We're very unique. And we're not really taught. We're not taught that that is something to value.
Mm-hmm.
We're taught that being sheeple, that, towing the line, that following along is acceptable and it's right and it's the best thing for us. Just read the Bible. You'll be okay. That's your blueprint for life. But the truth is I don't think it's a blueprint for my life. Definitely, I'm not using it as a reference manual. And, for those of us that it doesn't work for, like, where do we find this blueprint? And how can we find it? So I just think that, we're not taught that to value ourselves. We're taught that the value that we have is based on what we produce.
Yeah.
I really feel that way. And so, I adopted that for myself. Like, I adopted that attitude for myself about I'm only worth what I can produce. Right?
Yeah.
And taking time, being gentle with yourself, putting your wellness first and foremost before anything, family, friends, job, anything like that. We're taught that that's really selfish.
Yeah.
And we're taught that martyrdom is something to be admired.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And I have never bought into that. So it doesn't work for me.
I tried.
Did you?
I tried. Okay. I tried, everybody.
Okay.
I did. I tried. I tried to do that, go along, get along, good little boy thing. Like, mama's little cupcake. I tried. And I just exploded out of life. Like, I just, my whole energy was just, it was too big. It was too big for these constrictive, kind of like very grid-like pursuits or understanding of reality. And I couldn't do it. So I exploded out of this religious experience and then walked my own way from there on. Yeah.
And I'm sure that you learned some things through that experience that may have helped you, may have brought along with you. We when we go young and we go to church and we learn about, being a good citizen, a good, individual, that kind of stuff, doing good works for others, things like that. Those are all really valuable lessons. Yeah. So that's why I don't knock religion. And also, for some people, it's just easier. It's just easier to have the information already written, somebody to interpret it for you, somebody to encourage you to study it and lay down the law and tell you what the rules are. That is in many ways a lot easier.
I think that approach was very successful in the time that we are moving out of, where all you really needed to do to be a good person was to get up in the morning, eat your breakfast, and go to your job and work hard, and then come home at the end of the day and do whatever. And so it was a very simple life, because what was needed from people was the factory, the hammer. Go hit a hammer for 8 hours.
Be productive.
But then that was what was a good person. And now it's we don't live in that world anymore. So what's needed is the uniqueness. And so I think it touches on a piece of wellness, which is our professional and, our success has a huge impact, and not just external success, but most importantly, how we view success. And if we feel like we're failures, if we feel like we are not successful, it's going to be very difficult to have what you would call an elevated wellness experience of life.
So true. And I think too, that's part of what inspired today's topic about talking about wellness and just really understanding. I feel like we need to understand what that is for us, at least at its most basic components, if we are to pursue it, right? And then I feel for myself, my life has simply been an adventure about trying to add to my wellness toolbox, right? So then I have to be courageous and I have to put myself out there and I have to try different things. Right? And some things work and some things absolutely do not.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
Yeah.
Because that's how I collect these tools. I go into my little toolbox and then I can just draw on them whenever I want.
What I find interesting is that like this idea of the toolbox is like there's an interesting point in people's lives where they don't know they need a toolbox, and then all of a sudden we realize something happens. And it's like, oh, whoa! I need a toolbox for these. I need multiple things that I can pull out when times get difficult. For the most part, I mean, the toolbox is really there for the hard times, not so much for the good times. Although they can enhance the good times. What you really want in this toolkit is just the stuff to get you through the hard days where you're like, I don't want to get up and film, or I don't feel like I can do what I need to do today because of whatever very valid experience, right? There's a lot of things that, we don't want to push ourselves too far. There's a gentleness, but there's also a rigor and a discipline to keep going. And these tools are what help us keep going.
Exactly. And they help us just like cannabis. And so that's one of the synergies that I like.
Yeah.
Is that they bring us to ourselves. They bring us to this moment with ourselves, that kind of awareness. And I just feel like that's like so important. Oh my God. Because it's really, life is traumatized. I mean, I say this all the time, life is traumatized, but it is.
Yeah.
And even when good things happen, that can still be traumatizing, maybe not traumatizing, but it can still be challenging because it often brings about change.
Yeah.
And change is often challenging, even when it's for your betterment, right?
Yeah.
So I felt like, I don't know, you got anything to add to that? You want to say about that?
No, I think that this is a great jumping off point.
Okay.
And I just wanted to complete or to say on my side of it is that this is a evolving conversation. This idea of wellness or a life well led, or the good life, however you want to phrase it, whatever feels good to you. This is a conversation that will, if you want to achieve it, or if you want to fall in love and in line with it, this is a lifelong journey. This is not going to ever end. It just keeps going. And that means that nobody, like you said earlier, has a real clue about what's happening or where we're going, either at the individual, but certainly not the collective, because we're all just out here like rolling around in space trying to figure this out.
Right? All us stardust children.
Exactly.
So that just kind of leads into my thinking about, well, what are these areas of wellness? Okay, if we go with what's typically understood, of course, when you think of a holistic wellness, it's like your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. That's typically what that means in summary.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory, right? Physically is not just this vessel that hauls my ass around for umpteen years, right? I have not given it a lot of respect for most of my life. I mentioned in a different setting that I have smoked cannabis most of my life. I've smoked cigarettes most of my life. And I have not really exercised too much. I hated sports when I was young. You're the opposite, I know. You were like total wannabe jock. You like sports.
Yeah, but I was last pick, so I had to learn my character. That's where I learned my character, was like having to fight through, the disappointment of.
Aww.
Oh, it's sad then, but it's like very good.
Yeah.
Ingredients for life.
Yeah. It's built a real skill set around that. Yeah. So, but physical. I just have to say that, we don't know. We can deal with all kinds of stuff, right? Things can just come down the pipe, serious illness. We can walk out, it hurts, break something, whatever. Okay, there's that kind of stuff. Chronic pain, in my mind, is like in a whole freaking field of its own, you know?
Yeah.
And chronic pain is not always just physical either, right? Like when
No.
you think of like PTSD
Yep.
and stuff like
100%.
this.
Yep.
So, but chronic pain is like a life changer, right? It changes your whole life. So physically, it's kind of funny. Like I wished I'd had more respect for my body when I was younger, but I just assumed that it was here to do my bidding.
Dance, monkey, dance.
And I never really paid it much attention.
Right.
Until it started complaining.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I never I
Same.
thought of checking in with myself and my body. Like I have to laugh because my chiropractor that I see now, he's always telling me, listen to your body. And that concept was so far from my own like awareness, right? I would have never thought to do that. The only time I was like paying attention to my body was when it was like complaining, and I was pissed off at it.
Yeah.
You're either too big, or you're like too sore, or you're like not fast enough, or you know, you're not strong enough, like whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And so I wasn't much of an ally to myself. And I really neglected myself. I don't even want to talk about like being up all night partying, high heels. Oh my God. You know, no wonder I haven't seen a chiro now. You know, it's years of wearing high heels to the club.
Right.
What about you? I don't know.
I did go through a wearing high heels to the club phase, but I decided it wasn't for me. But no shade.
I have some upstairs that might fit you.
We'll have to do a fashion show later.
I think every man should walk in high heels. I think he should try to walk in high heels and just to understand how challenging it is to not just walk in them, but look good while you're walking in them.
That might be
this is not
too much to ask of me. I can, number one, mate, I can, if you find a pair that will fit these, you know, these hoofs, then we'll have to start from there.
Okay.
But
sorry to interrupt you.
No, this is great. What were we even talking about before we got into?
Well, we were talking about physical health, about how you treat yourself.
So I have a question, because grief to me is something that I would normally think of as maybe emotional or mental, but I feel like there's also a physical component to grief, and like it's similar, can be a similar thing to chronic pain, is like losing, you know, people in our lives, or things that happen to us that cause a lot of grief. It can also have a similar kind of
this is the
formation.
Thing. All of these things, like grief, like anxiety, like chronic stress, right? They bring pain. And so if that is a chronic condition, then you are experiencing chronic pain. Right? But we don't often acknowledge this to ourselves, that we are in pain. And we try to, you know, buck up, right? We try to like put our big girl panties on, or in case you're big boy panties. Well, I guess don't call them panties.
Well, yeah, if they're mine, then they're definitely big girl panties. But you know, sometimes they feel good. That's all.
Okay.
Swish, swish.
You know, we're supposed to suck it up. We're supposed to like, you know, carry on, and you know, we have to, right? Like, you know, especially like parents, right? They don't have the luxury often of like just like you know, just like you know, they got too much to do, too much to take care of, and people depending on them. Yeah. Okay, so that goes for parents, caregivers, anything like that. Sometimes it's even your job, right? So especially if you're an entrepreneur and have your own business, oh my God, you know, so so I'm just saying that like that time with yourself to check in with your wellness, is wellness in itself.
Yeah, it is like, this is this is so foundational. This is so core to the human experience that people neglect it at their own peril. The times that we're in right now, I just don't see how you could get through even one single day without creating a sense of deep reservoir of strength and nourishment that comes from a really like thoughtful wellness practice.
And like, we have our conscious mind that we're utilizing right now to talk about this kind of stuff with each other. But our subconscious mind is so much more powerful. Because it retains so much information. So like one of the examples that I would use for this with a client, let's say, is, think about when you were learning to walk. Remember when you were learning how to walk as a child? Of course not. You don't remember that because you were like too young for the most part. Okay, there's always going to be someone that says, "Oh, but I remember." Okay, you
lying.
Remember.
Stop it.
No, well, maybe, who knows, right? But I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you do remember. But the thing is, most people do not remember when they were learning to walk because they were only like about, 7, 8 months old, whatever time that is that we start to walk to. But think about it. Okay, this is how it would have went. And I know this because I have children and I have watched them. And so, first of all, they're just like, you lay them down on the floor and they're just like, stay put. Pretty soon they start to squirm back and forth and they learn how to roll over, right? And then pretty soon, they can sit up, and pretty soon they start to drag themselves, which turns into a more intentional drag themselves around the floor, so crawling. And then pretty soon you see them and they hoist themselves up onto something, a coffee table or something. And they spend that time, if you watch them, they spend that time looking for their balance. Right? Until they figure out how they can stay upright by finding that balance. So it's an intuitive exercise, right? Now, and then pretty soon, once they figure out the balance, well then, oh my God, they're walking everywhere. And then they're running everywhere, right? Because like it just feels really good to run. And then they never think about it no more. Because they've learned it and off they go and they just utilize that skill and there they go. Now, the only other time that they might think about that is if you broke a leg and you were unable to walk or something happened where you were unable, that was taken from you, right? And that can happen as a child, that can happen as an adult, but typically, people don't really think about it until it really hurts to walk, until it begins to be painful to walk. So your body is beginning to complain. So this is what I'm saying, we have some of these skills that we learn, but we don't think about the fact that we had to learn them. That's my whole point about this. Right? We just assume we should be able to do it. And if we can't do it, maybe there's something wrong with us or it's not for us or whatever. Right? So
one of the ways that I've heard the conscious and the unconscious mind described is like the conscious mind is the rider on the horse and the subconscious mind is the horse. And so the guide, the possibility that the horse could just buck you right off and take off on its own is there every single day. And so the idea is that if you guide a horse, down a path, every day you can groove that horse to become one with that path. You can now become, they'll be reliable even if there's no rider there. That's the route they will take because that's the one they will remember. And I feel like that's the key when we're talking about any sort of reprogramming or like creating new ways to think about, like if this is this is your first time coming in and being like, what the hell is wellness? Okay, fine, I'm willing to listen. Like, what are you even saying, people? Like, the point really is just that you can slowly, painfully slowly reprogram your life and yourself, but it takes like patience and time to really create new grooves in our brains and in our lives, so that these things become not like, I have to go to yoga, I have to meditate, I have to. And it's like, no, I get to do these things. Okay. I don't always want to. And sometimes I need to like give the horse myself a little nudge. But for the most part, over time, there's like a constant flow where once I'm now into it, it's like I'm so into this groove of, I want to feel better. I want my life to work better. I want those around me to be more abundant, to feel more empowered in their lives. I want to experience more joy. So there's this process by which now I feel like the rider and the horse are really in sync, and they're going in the same direction.
That's a really beautiful way to put that. And physical well-being is very deep. It's not just about being able to function. For me, it goes much deeper than that, and that's especially true through the aging process. Because my body is changing. I am changing because I'm aging. And actually we're aging since the day we're born. But I'm very cognizant about it, because some things that I've been used to in my life are changing. And I have to, and I want to acknowledge that, and I want to honor that, and I want to work with that as best and support that as best I can, so that I can do it well. Right? That's my wellness physically.
Yeah, do it well.
Do it well.
Yeah.
That could be a meme. So physical, mental wellness, well, that's like, that has like a couple of different connotations, right? There's mental health wellness, right? So you can think of that, or I might think of that in terms of like, if there's any chemical imbalances, or if there's, if my thinking, there's something wrong with my thinking.
Head injuries.
Yes, head injuries. Like, and sometimes when you're stuck in a pattern in your life that doesn't serve you, it doesn't bring you joy. Often we're repeating things and expecting a different outcome, which is, of course, the definition of insanity. So repeating the same thing and expecting a different outcome, right?
Yeah.
So our thinking, it's very hard to think your way out of insanity.
I've tried. Didn't work.
It's really hard.
Yeah, didn't work for me.
Yeah, so it didn't work for you, huh?
No.
It doesn't work for anybody. Let's put it that way. I'm going to safely say that, because that's the definition of insanity. And so with that kind of wellness, thinking about my mental wellness, then of course that speaks to my competency, my ability
Executive
to think.
functioning.
Yes,
Yeah.
Executive function. I like that.
Yeah.
To think critically, to think logically. I'm one of those people, like I'm super emotional, even though you'd never know it really, because I've learned how to I'm like a Vulcan. You know how they appear like really non-emotional, but it's because they were like over-emotional, so they learned to like Vulcan, where's my ears?
Live long and prosper. I get it. I get it.
So like, that emotional or that mental, sorry, we're still on that. Mental wellness is like, because I can feel overwhelmed emotionally and react to people, places, and things through that. One of my go-tos to counterbalance that is to go to logic.
Yeah.
So just just knowing that I have the ability to do that, and that I even can question that, like question and look at my own mental wellness. I look at what the result is around me, but that helps me know that there's nothing fundamentally wrong with me, because that's what I suspected.
Right. Yes. That there's
that there was something fundamentally wrong. What do you think about your mental wellness?
I've discovered that a lot of my challenges in mental wellness came from not understanding how to balance my energy, inputs and outputs. And a lot of my life also at the same time was spent with anxiety was like my drug. It was like fueling my productivity, but tied into that sense of productivity was like, I'm only valuable if I'm making something, if I'm working, if I'm making money. So it wore me down a lot. And I'm very lucky because life would kick the shit out of me just a little bit harder than some other people. And I would be able to fake it less. I would always look around in the corporate world and see people like, ha 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 ha, laughing at the fucking boss's joke. And I'm like, you're being a phony, you're being fake. And I'm like, I couldn't just do it myself. And so I found myself breaking down emotionally, physically, and mentally throughout like this like early mid-20s, where I was like trying to, and I know a lot of people out in that world right now are dealing with similar things. There's definitely a part of being a young person and growing into an adult that you kind of realize who you really are, and you realize what does and doesn't work for you. And sometimes people have more difficult journeys to take, but mine was manageable but hard. And I was able to see, though, like over time, that it really mattered to me that I was successful, but I also didn't want to I couldn't just do anything. Like it really had to match with my heart, or I couldn't put my full energy into it. And I didn't realize until later that like, oh, you can do that anytime.
Right.
So I mean, the long story short of it is just that over time I've learned to deal with things like depression and anxiety because I realize for the most part they're just a symptom of an imbalance somewhere. And usually if depression is like, I'm probably tired, like you just need to sleep, like stop, slow it down. And so these are some gifts, actually, even though they look like not like gifts. Sometimes they're a gift because they remind me of who I am, and they remind me of where I've come from. And they give me perspective on my mental health and how it wasn't always this good. So that's been my journey so far.
Yeah, mental health was really important to me because, of course, I lived with my mother who had a lot of serious mental health issues, had undergone electric shock therapy, and at a very young age had been institutionalized for several years prior to my being born. And that was as a result of trauma. It was a result of abuse.
Yeah.
And so I lived with her up until 1979, and I was terrified that first of all, this like was in the family kind of thing, right? Because I had all this stuff inside of me that I didn't know how to deal with. So I thought I was like crazy, maybe as crazy as I often viewed her as being. So it was a great fear. And of course, there was a lot of people in my life that were happy to confirm that self-diagnosis. There are lots of people that probably thought I was like completely off my rocker. And, maybe in some ways I was, not completely, but maybe, I definitely took a more scenic route in my life than a lot of people. But anyhow, it was a big deal to me. It was way more important to me. My mental health was way more important to me than my physical health. And I was very fortunate because my body just kind of went along with it. But, I can remember, as a teen, I had a very bad problem with acne. and I was already like a black girl.
Mm-hmm.
Like acne did not help.
Mm-hmm.
It was like terrible. It was disastrous.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand and choose to believe today that often when we're experiencing not wellness, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unwellness in other areas, it will often come through the physical.
Yeah. Or the mental and the mental.
And physical health has an impact on mental health.
Oh, totally.
Exactly.
Totally.
But guess what? So does emotional health.
Yeah.
Right? And all of these things, my point being, is that all of these things are connected.
Yeah.
And that is what holistic wellness is
Yeah.
about.
Mm-hmm.
So, emotionally, like, they say that when you are suffering from addiction, right? And when your addiction kicks in, it stunts your emotional growth.
Mm.
Okay?
Mm.
And I believe that sometimes trauma does that as well.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So I feel like when I was in my youth, I was living a grown-up life, like I was, trying to survive, but I didn't have. I had street skills, like street smarts, and I had smarts, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm not stupid,
No.
but but I did not have emotional maturity,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
right? And because I felt like that again, that emotional growth was just like ignored,
Mm.
right? And I had so many things happen in my life that impacted me emotionally, like they really hurt me. And they hurt me so much that my reaction to that was anger.
Mm.
That's how I expressed it. That's the only way I knew how to express it. And it came so naturally because I had it all built up.
Mm.
It was just like raring to get out,
Mm.
And so, I was stuck.
Mm.
I was stuck there for a long time.
Mm.
And so I had to learn, first I had to learn like to acknowledge that, and admit that, I really do feel like this.
Mm.
And then secondly, I had to like find different ways to express my anger. And one thing that goes along with that emotional growth for me is I always wondered, I found it frustrating, that's a better way of saying. I always found it frustrating to try to express myself.
Mm.
I felt like I was like completely misunderstood. I felt like nobody got me.
Mm.
Like nobody understood because they didn't understand where I came from that contributed to who I was. And they didn't understand that I was dealing with it in the only ways that I knew how. And how many people I don't know how many people feel like that, but I really, really, really confident I am not alone.
No. No. I think the emotional realm is also one that I was late to see as important. And I think that what I find now is that the journey of emotional health is about full expression of all my feelings, and to not deny how I feel, regardless of how I think I should feel or how I would like to feel. Because it's like whatever I'm dealing with is what's real. And so, there's a lot of work that I think is important around the nervous system relating to our emotional regulation. And I was like very dysregulated because, I would be surging on adrenaline and surging on kind of this like hopeful energy, but it would often lead me into predicaments where I would say the wrong thing, or especially in a professional setting, and I would like criticize the boss's idea or something. You're like, don't say that, right? Oops. So oops, or like, I would say, I remember like sometimes I would say things that I didn't want to say, like I knew I shouldn't say. Someone's like had told me don't tell anybody, and next thing I know I'm like out like, and so anyway, like so and so, you never guess what happened? I'm like, why did I do that? So I had moments like that where I'm like, why did I say that? And usually like they're like those moments that, you know, at like 3 a.m. and you're like there's like a, you know, fluorescent light bulb and you're in a bathroom and you're just like, why did you say that thing like 18 years ago? That was where I would store up this resentment of myself for not being regulated, for not being like, you know, and so I'd have all kinds of horrible names. I would yell at myself for making those kind of mistakes or those dysregulated actions.
Right.
And so for me, it's emotional health has been one of the hardest to learn, but it's been the most rewarding because I feel like now I get to trust myself and I get to feel all of my emotions and I get to be able to experience them.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Um, what you're saying is like so important. You know, that expression of our emotions, of what we're feeling, and it doesn't matter that feelings aren't facts, and it doesn't matter about, you know, whether or not we are justified, right? Like that is not the point.
No.
Right? The point is, this is my emotion, and you know, the expression of emotion. Now, I don't know if anybody can relate to this, and I say that, and of course, I feel like, because you know, I'm just not that unique, right? There's like so many of us share so much in common. Maybe the circumstances are different, but the resulting feeling is the same. So one of the things, I don't know about you, but I left home at a very early age. I was a teenage runaway. Okay. So I left home and I was about 14 years old. And up until that point and beyond that point, I learned from a very young age that showing your emotions could make you super vulnerable. And so then anybody with a predatory kind of, you know, agenda can take advantage of that. And so one of the things that I learned and helped to teach myself was about how not to express emotions, right? And so that's why I'm saying, like, all that stuff, that anger, that fear, that resentment, like you're talking about, you know, that shame, because there's lots of shame that goes along with, you know, unwellness, right? And so I just feel emotionally, the ability, I try to express how I feel today in appropriate ways, because I say that, and if you remember, you can remind me when we get to the topic of sexuality, I'm going to talk about that. But in emotional health, I had to relearn, like I had to learn how to, and agree, like, you know, allow myself, give myself permission to express my emotions. And I'm going to tell you a story about that.
Go for it.
That explains that, why that affects me so much, why that bothers me so much. When I was younger, I really liked motorcycles. And my dream was to have a Harley Davidson motorcycle. And I didn't know how to ride a motorcycle. So the first thing I did was I bought a little Yamaha, like 400 or something. And I learned on that. I had a friend that did ride a motorcycle teach me how to ride that bike. Show me where everything is, and then I just had a straight for the road, and I just like went up and down, dropped it immediately. I had to learn how to pick it up, and then rode up and down this road till I felt confident, and then I went to town, downtown. But my dream was to have a Harley, and then finally I found myself in a position where I could have one, and I bought this secondhand Harley. And I was married. I was married to a man that I felt that I could not show my emotion in front of, because that would give him, you know, would make me vulnerable to him, and he was not someone that I trusted. And so I remember he came with me with his truck to go look at this bike, and then if I liked it, I was going to buy it. And I just remember standing beside this bike and looking it over, and the gas tank, it was purple and black. And I remember when I was like, and I'm like, yeah, okay, hand him over the money, even loaded up in the truck, and jumped in the truck and went home and carried on, you know. Inside, I'm like, I see the purple, which is one of my most favorite colors. And I'm like, oh my God, like inside. And I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. Oh my God, this could really be mine. Oh my God. And like, I hand him the money, and inside I'm like, I can't believe that I did this. I accomplished this. This was a dream of mine, and I accomplished it. Wow. And this thing of beauty right here with Harley Davidson on the side, this little Sportster, this is mine. I learned how to ride it. I got to buy it. I got to find it, and it's mine. And I accomplished something that I never thought I imagined I might. And the saddest part was that I didn't feel like I could express that. I just had this poker face of, yeah. Yeah, I think it'll work.
Mm.
Here's your money. You know? So what I felt was robbed of the joy of that moment. And it really struck me, like it really, oh my God, wow. And so I had to do a lot of stuff around that because I wanted to be able to express my emotion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Emotional health. You said it.
Emotional health, baby. And then spiritual, I think that's a really tough one for some people. But I think we are going to make it really simple.
Yeah. Go right ahead.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, brother.
No, I think it's actually, it's literally like the ineffable, which means the unknowable, which we can't even talk about it. And so that's the first thing to think about, is that we're not actually be able to really put words to something that's more of a feeling than anything else. But I mean, at the same time, there is a sense of our spirit, which our identity, which you might talk about, our eternal identity, the part of us that never dies.
Our soul.
You could say soul. Some people say that, but for me, it's just like our spirit is just like that, like real deep center of ourselves that, when the body and the mind and the heart and the emotions fail us, sometimes our spirit can come in and save the day. And mine has a lot, and I think that's also, for me, it's where our intuitive sense lies, the things that we, how do we know things without knowing them? How do we feel things without first experiencing them? Deja vus and dreams and all these things, like it's all residing in some place that's still mysterious, but yet there is, I think, the more we trust a certain part of ourselves, or trust a voice. For me, it's like a little voice, inner voice. The more I trust that, and the more I see success, or it leads me in the right way, the more I can be relaxed about it and just kind of let spirit be there in the background, always guiding me. And if I need that real sense of center, I can go there. But there's I think a lot of joy from just living inside of a spirit, or living a soul's journey, but really living in the body as you experience kind of the magic of life.
Yeah, what's that saying? What is it? Like, we are spiritual beings having a human experience?
Human experience, yeah.
That seems pretty. That seems to work for me.
Yeah.
Now, there's all kinds of ways that you can look at that, like spirituality. That can, again, mean different things to different people, right? Yeah. But I feel at its core that it's really about connection to something greater than ourselves. And sometimes that's part of community, with others and relationships, our world. And to me, that is part of it. And some of it is also, it speaks to our purpose. Why are we here? Because I think we all have these questions, like, why am I going through this life that I've got? Why did this happen to me? Like, why? And I think that is a lot what drives our spiritual quest, to connect with, whatever we want to call it, God, universe, the creator, source, whatever it is that we term that thing that's greater than ourselves. Now, what do you call it? What do you refer to it as?
I mean, I find resonance with the term source.
Okay.
I feel like source energy, like it feels like there is an impulse, a creative impulse at the center of our universe, or the center of life. And so source works for me.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I often call it the universe.
Yeah.
And so, like, just so I'm just curious about what we call it. But this thing, like, it's very hard, even for people who are atheists, right? Who don't believe in like a greater thing like that.
Yeah.
But even thinking of us, I mean, we are all energy.
Yeah.
Right. So thinking about quantum physics, right?
Exactly.
So
yeah. There's a way in.
There's a way in, right? And so I just feel that agnostics, that's a little bit easier. You don't have to know what you call it, right? You don't have to know what you name it, but you can be open to the fact that there's something greater than yourself, even if that is the collective, collective human race, or community, or whatever.
Sunsets, like kids laughing. Like, there's so many ways that you can connect through what we call like the spiritual realm, or even like a sense of spiritual wellness. For me, it's really tied into like willpower and purpose. So for me, it's like the spirit is what, like, the body's not willing, but the spirit's like, come on, you got to do it. Like, this is important. Get up and go. And so that, I feel like I have a strong relationship there. That I think is a sign of a healthy spiritual part of wellness, is like ability to I think take big steps and take risks and be like, okay, I'm going to step out of my comfort zone because I know I have more in me, because I know I have this connection. I know I can, even though my own self, I might feel unworthy, or I don't know if I'm smart enough or good enough, or if people like me, but this voice is just like, keep going, keep going.
I feel like that's part of that concept of, which also occurs to me, like, about my higher self, my best self, right? My spiritual self, my soul self, however you want to look at that. And, for a lot of years, I would ask, if I was confused about something, I might ask, like, what would Oprah do? But, I can ask, what would Dee do? What would Miz D do in her best, right?
Yeah.
So, so those are like the four, typical areas that we think of when we think of holistic wellness, the whole, right? All of those things are important, not one more than the other or less. So, and I've added a couple more because I find them to be important to me. And so definitely, as an artist, I feel like a life artist, an artist of life.
Yeah.
When someone asks me, like, oh, what kind of art do you make? Or what kind of artist are you? And I'm like, I'm a life artist. and so as an artist, I need to be creative.
Yeah.
I need creativity in my life. And because I have a very, artistic soul. I just do. And sometimes I can't do things the way that other people did. And that was really, my mother was a very talented, sketcher. She used to sketch castles and kittens very well.
Okay.
And she would work with like charcoal. And then if she did watercolor, she would do flowers. And she took classes that were like, I don't know what it's called, but you have somebody modeling there, and still life, I guess, kind of stuff. Whatever. Anyways, she could make things look exactly how they were, like a face or something, portraiture. And I could never do that. I can't even draw a stick figure, right? So I was, in my mind for a long time, I was not an artist.
Right.
I did not see myself like that because I could not do what I saw in books or what someone else could do. So that's a whole interesting kind of thing about, how we find ourselves as well, and claiming things for ourselves. But creativity, I feel, the ultimate creatrix really is the universe.
Yeah. Life is life.
I mean, like our world is, there's just so many amazing things in our world. We are shown creativity all around us. And creativity is not necessarily something, I don't think, that we do. I think it's an approach that we take.
Yeah. Anything can be creative.
Yeah.
Life can be creative. I think that one of the things that I did for a long time was look at my life like it was a video game. So I'd like wake up in the morning and see like, what am I gonna experience today? And I would,
I'm not gonna bounce off of.
What am I gonna bounce off of? And I would probably, at that time, I'd probably roll a joint and get a coffee and then just kind of go out into the day. I was living more of a free spirit life. I used to wear no shoes in the city, and old Italian men would come and say, "What's wrong with what happened? What happened to your shoes? Where are your shoes?" I'm like, "Oh, my shoes are here." He's like, "Did they break?" I'm like, "No, I'm just not wearing them." And he was just walked away like, well, "Who is this? What is this kid's up to?
Crazy kids."
But that would be my approach. Was like, okay, let's go make life a video game. But I think creativity, it's hard to put a pin on what it is, because it's something like a conversation can be creative, cooking can be creative, anything, if you do it in the spirit of creativity, could be creative. So.
Exactly. So that's kind of a two-edged thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing about, whatever it makes you feel like you're being creative is creative.
Yeah.
And then you can use that also as a tool to make anything creative.
Yeah. Yeah.
How's that?
Creative.
So creativity, I just love to be inspired, and I feel inspired by all kinds of people, places, things, all kinds of experiences. And I love to be able to, when I just feel like creating, like for me, it really is about creating. It doesn't make me feel like the goddess. I don't know, like I'm in charge. Like I just, okay, I might take more than 7 days, but whatever. I don't know. I just love to create.
Yeah.
I love to see what comes forth from my mind, from my heart, from my, physically, from my faith, my belief systems. And when I'm not creative, when I don't, maybe I'm like super busy with something else and I just don't have the time, equal the energy to be creative, I feel like it's a little bit soul sucking.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like it's like very much, if I don't have a creativity and action in my day from a day-to-day basis, my energy depletes very quickly. And it's really interesting because creative energy and sexual energy for me are very tied. So I like that you have both of those on there. But in general, like that creative part, if I don't give time to it, if I don't give attention to it, then the overall wellness train starts to slip off the tracks pretty quick.
And because I love creativity so much, even though we're talking about these things separately, but actually I find that they really intermingle, like they're really synchronous. And so for me, that's like the ultimate multitasking is if I can take a bunch of tools and put them together and satisfy so many different kinds, wellness in so many different ways. I just think that's like an amazing thing. So creativity, I can't say too much about it. And when we talk about it in a later episode, I can't wait to talk about intentional creativity.
Such a rabbit hole.
Yeah, right? Could be anything. And we're being creative right now as we like filming this podcast for us, right? So so you're participating in our creativity. I love it. Okay, so sexual, that brings us to that, which is like right next.
Yeah, when I get that feeling, I won't heal it.
You know what? I was thinking of that song today when I wrote it up on the board.
It's easy to, it's
great minds think alike.
Yeah,
but there could have been, let's talk about sex, baby.
Yeah, that's more my
generation.
That one,
but that would have been too predictable, I think. No, like right now.
Yeah, well, that's. I think we should bring that one back more.
Maybe
a little salt and pepper.
Maybe.
Has there been anything since? Has there been any like overtly? I mean, there's been a lot of overtly sexual music, but that really throws sex in the name.
I can't think of any. All right, so sexual health. Woo, 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 woo. Red light going on.
I just remember like my grade 10 phys ed teacher, Mr. Peterson, And God, that was the worst guy to teach us about sex. He was like this really old school gym, like your typical like movie gym coach, gym teacher, you know. And one day he said, "Go home and tell your parents you believe in premarital interdigitation." And
What?
and we're like, "What, sir?" And he's like, "That means you believe in it's okay to hold hands before marriage."
Oh,
So
wow.
that was Mr. Peterson's hilarious. Yeah, we didn't learn much. I'm not gonna lie, but thankfully, there's more people out there teaching sexual healing than that.
Yeah. Sexuality, our sexuality, I think is incredibly important. And there's so many things I want to say about this. It's like, where to start? You know, I think depending on what your culture you're brought up in, where you're brought up, the time in which you're brought up, like these are all going to have bearings. The societal norms for that era are all going to have, bearing on that impact of that. So I'm just going to talk about my own sexual. And as a child, an abused child, I was introduced to sex from a very violent and what's the word I'm looking for? Like a very predatory kind of experience. Okay, and so that's how I learned about sex. And if you take the experience, that's one thing. But it's like every experience we have feeds into our perspective, our perception, and guides our perspective. And so I grew up having a very different perspective of sexuality. And there's a lot of stuff like with cannabis. It's a very popular topic to talk about sex because cannabis enhances sex, something that is already can be really wonderful. It enhances it and makes it even better in a lot of different ways, right? As a consumer, if you're consuming, that might be helping you relax. It might be helping you feel more excited because everything's enhanced. So something that feels good normally is going to feel wonderful with cannabis.
Yeah.
And then there's the other ways of consuming cannabis in terms of like topicals and stuff. Cannabis makes amazing lubricant. And that's incredibly important for a lot of women, especially as they age and they begin to experience menopause and things like this. It's like the Sahara Desert there, man. It's like
I would go ahead and say lubrication is good for everybody.
Okay, well, I can't speak for men because I'm not a man, you know.
No, but I'm pretty sure everyone can benefit from that from time to time with a little dab here or there.
Makes things a lot easier.
Coconut oil is if you're not worried about if you're not wearing condoms, coconut oil is a good one.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that true? I didn't know that. Okay. I never used coconut oil, but that's good to know in a pinch. So like, yes, it can totally enhance your sexual experience, whether alone or with someone else, so with a partner. Okay. But it does so much more than that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what does it for me.
Yeah.
Because having a different perspective of my own sexuality, and that is going to be true for like anybody who feels like they don't kind of belong in their own body, especially, right? Like you know, transgender people really probably struggle with that, right? Um, and so it's really about exploring our own sexuality. This is really important for our wellness, right? The problem is, where the problem comes in is when we do that exploration in unsafe ways.
Yeah.
And undiscerning ways.
Discernment. That's the big D, not what you think it is. It's actually discernment.
So, and so what can happen is we can do our exploration, which is really good, but we can put ourselves in like, you know, vulnerable situations. We can use less discernment about our safety and things like that. And then, you know, things that happen that are out of our control.
For sure. I feel like I want to just break down discernment for a second in this context, but also in like everything that we're talking about today, and definitely other videos, because this idea of discernment is that, you know, we know from one moment to the next, if a person, of course, we're never perfect in this, but the more we trust ourselves, the more we trust those inner voices and our body as our guide, and we can start to feel like this person is giving off the bad vibes. I'm like, I don't know why. I don't have to like mentally be aware of what it is. I can just be like, yeah, I'm not feeling the vibe. And so I think discernment with sex is huge, because obviously, you know, figuring out who you're going to choose as a partner and what that all means and whatnot, it's a big decision. But it's also just like knowing what you want to do in any particular moment, knowing what you're comfortable with, knowing where you want to, do you want to push yourself or not. So discernment is super key. I wanted to tell a little story about in terms of my sexual wellness journey, and where kind of where that meant, or where it landed for me. And so one of the things that I had early experiences of being heartbroken by girls. You know, I was like, you know, sad. Everybody. One single tear from me, right? And so I had this like kind of, it affected my mental health, because it created negative self-talk. So when I was getting older, when I was like out, you know, when I'm leaving boyhood behind and I'm a man who now needs some skills with women, what do I say? It doesn't come out. And I try and speak, nothing happens. You know, and so all of these early experiences led me to feel like a failure. And I was like, oh, you know, am I too fat? Is my weight, you know, am I saying stupid things? Like, what am I doing? And so it created this spiral of like, why can't I figure this out? Everyone else seems to know what's going on. Everyone else just like walks up to women or whatever and gets their phone number. And that's way back, kids, where you actually had to get a phone number. You have to talk to somebody, or you're not getting anything.
There was no swiping left or right or whatever.
Yeah, no. There was. I definitely.
Oh, was there? Not for me.
She would just look up and be like, mm-mm.
"Oh, I see."
That's a swipe left back in the day. It was harsh. It was in your face, you know. But yeah, so I think that was where I kind of started from, and then, you know, cut to many years later, after many very interesting and great relationships and a few bad ones, and a lot of self-development. And I remember it was this one night, this Saturday night, I was out with some friends, and we were just having a great time. We went to like this one event downtown, then we went to this other party, it was just like one of those nights, just like really special nights. Everything was just working. Everyone's having a great time. And, you know, I was not thinking about, I wasn't thinking about sex. I wasn't thinking about meeting anybody. I was just I was having joy of myself, and I was enjoying my friends. And all of a sudden we were leaving the last place, about to go back to my friend's house. And this woman started walking up the stairs as I was going down. And she just like looked at me and pointed at me. She's like, you're coming with me. And I was like, what is happening right now? What is happening? Because I remember like one of my major complaints about the sisterhood, sorry, sisterhood. One of my complaints was like, how come they don't just like tell us what they want? How come they always have to do this like, Rubik's Cube of emotions, trying to figure out what to say, what not to say? Why don't they just be like, you over there, come here? And then this was like this moment where this happened. And it was like, and I remember like, she had just left a 7-year relationship and she was looking for a rebound. And I was like perfect, for what she was looking for. And after,
good timing.
Literally, right? And then so I remember walking home in the fog, and I was like, it felt like one of those old time movies. And I was like walking around on my way back to my friend's house after this hookup, and I was like, okay, I guess I don't have to worry about that anymore. At least there's one less thing that I know that I'm not a failure at. I figured that out at least. Like whatever happens, this moment can't be taken away. And I think for me, then that led to a lot. Like once I had that one experience, then I was like able to be much more calm and much more relaxed. And then I actually had the game that I needed when my queen when I met the woman of my dreams. I had the game to actually be able to say it because I'd gone through these experiences of confidence building. So when the moment came, I was able to walk up and words came out instead of no words.
That's a great story. I love that. And I'm so glad that you have your queen, just like I have my king. Yeah. The trouble with sex for us, I think, is that it's so good, but it can create a lot of so not good things, including feelings. And like, I want to talk about that because the same degree, I would say, about the strong feelings about sex, morality wise, and all these people's opinions on how that should happen, what's acceptable and what's not.
Yeah.
It is much the same if you deviate, not that you're a deviant, but if you deviate from those things for some people, then it is the similar kind of shame as cannabis, as being a cannabis consumer, right?
Two things you don't want your mom to catch you. And one is cannabis, smoking weed. It's like, it's the same sort of energy as if you get walked into with making out with someone or masturbating. It's that same sort of like, oh no, this is shameful. This is bad. We shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah. So I can't wait to get into that episode and talk about sexuality.
Yeah.
There's just like so much things to say about it.
Yep.
And cannabis can really help, not just with the actual physical act of sex, but it can really help with healing from sexual trauma as well.
Yeah.
And finding your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Sexually. So there's that. And then, of course, there is relationships, which leads often into those relationships. But I'm not just talking about sexual relationships or partners or things like that. I'm talking about all kinds of relationships with others, like people, your relationship with your community, and as another human being, the global community, another person in the world. And honestly, most importantly, that relationship with yourself. Yeah. And then, of course, we're talking about our relationship with cannabis as well.
And they're so interconnected.
Yeah.
That relationship thing is, to me, it's almost like relationships are like what happens in direct correlation to your emotional health. So I like how these all connect back to the other things. So for me, like relationships are about that emotional health. If I feel regulated, if I feel centered, which often comes from positive self-talk and exercise, but when I feel those things, then my relationships seem to go better. And that's just everything. That's just any interaction, small ones at the store or with a colleague on a quick phone call, or my partner or my kids or whatever. It's just like it all seems to flow together. When things are working, like they really feel like they're working.
Mm-hmm. And it's so important for us to be connected to other people. And you know, I am by nature and by experience a loner my whole life.
Mm.
I prefer my own company. And I can spend like weeks alone. Like
Mm.
I'm, you know, a very house person, right?
Yeah.
I like my home and I like myself. But I remember when I met, you know, especially coming out of a bad marriage, you know, like, oh my God,
Mm.
just leave me alone. But then when I made that decision, you know, to share my life with someone, that I was open to that and that I
Yeah.
actually did want to do that.
Mm.
And you know, thank goodness the person that resonated with that, you know, with me, uh, you know, I've just learned so much from that relationship. Like I can't believe it. This year we're going to be married for like 20 years, and like I can't even believe, first of all, that you know I've been with one man for 20 years, and secondly, that someone could like just not just, you know, tolerate, not just put up with you and your
Mm-hmm.
idiosyncrasies or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but actually like embrace them
Mm-hmm.
and celebrate them. And even if they don't participate in
Mm-hmm.
them, but encourage you
Yeah.
to enjoy.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very special person.
Yeah.
So thanks, Steve. But yeah, and this relationship with ourselves, like this is number one. This is we
Yeah.
got to get on this.
Yeah.
We got to get on this. We got to be right in our corner
Yeah.
for whatever is best for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of those kinds of things brings me to my last bit. And that is just like an overall thing about, I call it the bliss factor, you know, like just about how much overall joy
Yeah.
do I feel about my life
Mm-hmm.
and about my living
Mm-hmm.
and about me.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't give it a scale. Like I don't give it a scale
Mm.
because often when I get to that, the bliss factor, it evokes in me, um, it evokes like a state of gratitude. Because when I ask myself the question, like fundamentally, how happy am I with myself, with my life, with living? It triggers all of the things that I am grateful for in my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it instantly kind of puts you in a state of gratitude. But yeah, so those are the areas that like are super
Mm-hmm.
important to me. And
Yeah.
I feel like if I have a little bit and I pay
Mm-hmm.
attention a little bit to each of
Mm-hmm.
them, I feel like centered and I
Yeah.
feel balanced and I feel my equilibrium, my inner
Mm-hmm.
balance is
Mm-hmm.
good.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I can deal with anything,
Mm-hmm.
good, bad, or ugly.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. You know, the the journey that we are beginning with you is one that I know that you and I have traveled our own paths to get here,
Mhm.
and that what makes us unique and special is the what it took for us to be here having this conversation.
Absolutely.
And I'm just really excited about where we're going to go next. And now that we have established how important it is to have a toolbox, we can start to develop some tools that can go inside of those boxes, and
Absolutely.
that's really exciting.
Absolutely. And, you know, this is what this podcast is all about. This is about us and our wellness. And, you know, we hope that by sharing what's important to us, what we're working on, what we struggle with, what we have success with,
Mm-hmm.
we hope that, you know, it lets you know that you're not alone. Like we hope that, you know, you understand that we are
Mm-hmm.
here to support you, to inspire you, and to empower you to have your wellness, whatever that means to you. So yeah, we're going to talk about in the comments. Tell us what wellness means to you. what are the things? Have we missed anything?
Yeah.
You know, I'm open to more stuff. Can always feel gooder. Can always feel better.
There's a joy of sometimes just saying whatever the word is and like breaking the rules of grammar and just speaking.
There you go. There you go.
You know?
All right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. And meanwhile, until next time, stay well.
Keep thriving with the vibes.
Yeah.
Peace.